So today we are going to see availability observability stack, how to set up logging and monitoring in Kubernetes as well as in OpenShift. In OpenShift there's a native Kibana, but still we will see step by step process. So first thing you have to see is Prometheus. Okay, let me go step by step. So first is Prometheus. Okay, so what this Prometheus will do, let me add the spelling correctly. So first is the Prometheus, which is collector. Okay, we call it as metrics collector. So what is the metrics? Say you have CPU, memory, RAM. So the memory and RAM are same. So think you have a thermometer. Okay, so you are monitoring a health. So there will be some fever or not fever. So first CPU usage. Okay, then memory, then pod health in Kubernetes or OCP. Okay, then latency, network latency, say we can say request latency. So these matrices are being collected using Prometheus. Okay, it collects the CPU memory, and this is time series data. Okay, usually logs are time series data, where it is time series data which is collected by Prometheus. Then we have Grafana. So what is Grafana? Grafana is for visualization. So it is for dashboard visualization, where what are the metrics you have collected from Prometheus that will be shown in a nice dashboards like charts, graphs. Okay, so CPU size, memory. So basically graphs and charts will be, you can have the visualization in the Grafana in a single dashboard. Okay. It can also connect to Loki to show the logs together in the same dashboard. What is Loki? Okay. There is an operator available in OpenShift, or you can install the Loki from the image. Okay. So Loki is nothing but a log. Okay, storage and query engine. Okay, log storage and query engine. So this this will run as a pod, Loki as a pod. What happens? So your metrics, you are collecting a metrics, right? So what is happening? Why it is happened? Okay, logs from the Loki stores all the logs from the pods. It stores all the logs from the pod. So to see what happened, why happened, okay, you need to understand. So today morning, what time the CPU was high, tomorrow morning, when the CPU will high. Okay, so based on that, we can use some queries. Okay, similar to Elastic, you can use some queries to get the logs. Then we have alert manager, fourth one. So to give the alerts. So when you say alert manager, either email alert or Teams alert need to be configured in the alert manager. So say CPU is greater than 90%, right? Then actually you can give me an alert. It can trigger for every 5 minutes, it can check. If CPU goes below, then it's not so trigger alert. So these kind of conditions we can make when to trigger the alert. It can be in email, Slack, PagerDuty, okay. Any kind of system you are using, it will notify. Okay. So who is actually doing this CPU thing, which is Prometheus. Okay, Prometheus is collecting the CPU metrics. Okay, so already the metrics is collected by Prometheus, but when the metrics are more than 90%, say CPU is more than 90%, then actually you trigger an alert. That is the alert manager is doing. Okay, Then what we are doing? Then we are using something called cluster log forwarder. Okay, cluster log forwarder, or you can say log router. Okay, what is this cluster log forwarder? Okay, basically by default, logs are scattered across the nodes in OCP. Okay, so logs are scattered in OCP, or in Kubernetes, we have pods and nodes, right? So those are actually scattered across the nodes. So the pod will run in node 1. Due to some reasons, the pod can move to node 2 also. That is how Kubernetes will work, right? So the log forwarder acts like a post office. Okay. So it acts like a post office where all the logs which collected from the pods are forwarded into the Loki. Okay. So it collects the logs from pods to Loki. So Loki is what? Loki will store the logs. Okay. So Loki will store your all your logs, and where you can do. So it will actually collects and forward collects the logs from the pods. Okay, collects the logs from the pods. I'm going very slow for so that you will understand the whole observability stack and forward them to Loki. Okay, so you already know what is Loki is. Okay, so now in this architecture, we have Prometheus. Okay, we have Grafana. Prometheus is for metrics collector, where it collects the metrics, and you have Grafana, you have Loki, you have alert manager, you have log forwarder. All this will be running as pods only in Kubernetes, like multiple pods. Okay. So in OpenShift, you can also configure metrics from the console using monitoring metrics from the console. But consider you don't use OpenShift, you want to configure everything, then you have to install Grafana operator. Okay. So first you can use Prometheus operator. Let me so now let me put the implementation step for, right? So how you will implement? You understood all the components of observability. So how you will implement? First we need a Prometheus operator, because OpenShift provides an operator. If operator is not available, you have to use a container image, because some environment they will not provide you administrator access to install the operator. If access is restricted, you have to use a Prometheus operator. So Prometheus from the Grafana operator or image by default. Okay. So image is nothing but the pod. Okay. So these two will run as a pod in Kubernetes or OCP, OpenShift Container Platform. Okay. So then what we need Loki to be installed, log forwarder to be installed. Okay. So what will happen in there is a specs. Okay. So let me give you one specs, one YAML file. So these all are many YAML files played together. Okay. So say for example, you have a this is the YAML file for log forwarder. Okay. So what happens is, let me put it in this way so that it is visible for us. Okay, let me put it here so it is visible for us. So, okay, if you see here, we are using logging OpenShift v1. This or by default OpenShift will have a YAML. So the kind is cluster log forwarder. Okay. You can give any name, your service name. Then you have a namespace name. And this log forwarder output should go to who? Loki. And we need Loki also running as a pod. So if anything run as a pod, it will have the service URL or service attached to it. Okay. So that service endpoint, so pod to pod, we can use service endpoint, or you can use route also. Okay. It depends on how you configured. Okay. If you are configured route, then you have to use route URL. If you configure service, then service URL. And there is a pipeline which we are pushing. If you see, we are pushing to app logs. Okay. Where it gives the input references as application and looking. So basically, your log forwarder is giving pushing the logs to Loki. Okay. So there will be a lot of YAML files. Okay. So you have to understand how you will configure this deployment files and YAML files to put together. Okay. So I hope you understand the components. I will not go too much into the implementation now. So to recap, for setting up the entire observability stack, you need to understand the Prometheus, which is the log collector. Instead of log collector, you say metrics collector. Metrics means CPU, memory, whatever the happening in the cluster. That metrics collector is Prometheus. Then Grafana is the visualization, which is the dashboard layer. Then we have Loki. Loki is nothing but storing the logs. So somewhere you have to store the logs. So this Loki is important because in case in your environment, if you want to keep the logs for longer term, 1 year, 2 year, if some OpenShift environment, they will keep it for only 6 months, 7 months. Then you have to configure Loki to store your log using the PV and PV volume. You can store the log for long days. Okay, Grafana is the end. Finally, you're going to see this all this into the Grafana only. Then alert manager is to trigger the alerts. Cluster log forwarder is to actually collect the logs. So this matrices from Prometheus, okay, these matrices from Prometheus will be collected by log forwarder, and log forwarder will push it to Loki. Loki will push it to Grafana. Okay. So I hope you understood. Prometheus will, whatever Prometheus metrics collected will be collected by log forwarder, and log forwarder is like a postman. Any node, wherever the node and pods are running, it will collect the logs in one place like log router, and from there it is going for Loki. Loki is the storage. So wherever we are storing, and we can also query from the storage. From the Loki, it is going to Grafana. Again, whatever metrics we are getting in Prometheus, that based on that metrics, we are setting up the alerts. Okay. This is the entire observability stack which you have to understand to set up in Kubernetes or OpenShift environment. Thank you.